somehow, some way, I must formulate an opinion that will get me thousands of thumb downs and negative subscriber count by the time everyone's done unsubscribing to my channel after they hear what I'm about to say. I'm perfectly okay with the idea that Idris Elba is going to be playing James Bond. Yeah, you heard that. Whether or not it was ever really anything in the books or has ever really been officially stated in the movies, the common perception by John Q audience by this point is basically that old fan theory that James Bond is just an identity that comes along with the 007 tag number, and it occasionally switches out with actual individual agents. When someone becomes the 007, they become James Bond. And I don't know how to break it to people, but there are black people in England and Scotland. And so the idea that one of them might join the British secret intelligence agencies and excel at his job and be given a license to kill, and something bad happened to the Daniel Craig edition of James Bond, and so they need a new James Bond. Are you saying that you can't see Idris Elba in a tuxedo driving a nice car or walking into a casino somewhere? You can't see Idris Elba being charming with ladies? I totally can see it. I've heard a few people say Tom Hiddleston, and for book accuracy, sure, but who gives a fuck anymore? Humans don't even read. The only reason we're literate is so we can type things on Twitter. That's the only reason we're maintaining the skill. Eventually we'll get rid of that as soon as we got the brain implants. Only the computers will know how to read. We'll just think things. You know, Idris Elba's okay. It's perfectly okay. He can be a good actor. A lot of it depends on who the director's going to be. I mean, him playing Roland Deschain in The Dark Tower, I wouldn't necessarily say the faults in that movie had anything to do with him at all. It was just a bad movie. Poorly constructed, poorly edited. It felt like someone's pilot for a TV series, and that they decided to just show it in a theater instead. But it had a lot of television-esque kind of tropes in it and stuff, so. And as to the whole idea of blackwashing, whitewashing, yellowwashing, something about the modern age has made us all very literal-minded. And one forgets that when watching a movie or a television show, you're engaging in theater. The audience is a participant, and that theater is supposed to be exaggerated in some ways. It's not supposed to be a literal interpretation of life. Maybe it's because of shit like news documentaries is why people feel like everything's got to be an exact match to reality. But the art of acting is that anybody could potentially play anything. And it's the quality of their acting that gets the audience to be sucked in and looking past who they are on the surface. Idris Elba could play first president of the United States, George Washington, for all I care, as long as he gives a really badass performance. And I wish we could live in that world. But unfortunately, we can't. Because everyone's a bunch of just literal-minded, petty people. You know, on one hand, it is really wrong for certain media companies and Hollywood in general to be on this bandwagon of like always just going to immediately to this fuck the fans kind of mentality if people try to raise complaints, and blanketing anyone who raises a legitimate claim against something they've done wrong or an error they've made as them they're just another troll or a sexist or a racist or whatever. But the thing is a lot of times it is kind of weird that anytime there is anything done, there's this fucking outcry. Oh my God, a female Batwoman. Ah! Oh my God, a black James Bond. Ah! Why can't we all just be equal? We just want things done on merit. Well, what if Idris Elba was being hired on merit? You goddamn assholes. Knowing the production background of the thing you're watching, also, I feel it helps enhance the viewing. If you know what the intent of the artists involved, the writers, the actors, everyone, the director, what that it was they're trying to convey, it helps you look for that in there. And being so, especially with like nerds are really bad about it too, the nitpicky ones, and they know who they are, who like obtusely, okay, I'll just come right out and say it. There's a certain channel that's been doing this long, long, long expose on First Contact, the second Star Trek Next Generation cast film. And easily 80% of it is nitpicking over things that are jarring in relation to the television show canon. The television show's own canon was not consistent within itself. So right off the bat, like see, the movie's not being consistent with something that wasn't consistent with itself doesn't seem all that terribly offensive. And it's also consciously ignoring the fact that the people behind these movies were making deliberate decisions with what they were doing because they were putting it on a larger platforming and selling it to a larger audience potentially. That there was going to be people seeing this movie that had not ever watched the old show. And so jamming half the script full of canon references is a complete fucking waste of time that most people aren't going to get without a whole bunch of more exposition and crap that'll slow down the plot and pacing of the film. They were trying to make a Borg horror movie with a weird beeline about like mankind achieving, fast and light travel in the midst of like a apocalyptic downturn in fortune. And by like nitpicking all the canon parts, you're kind of ignoring the message there of what I've just said. It's like you're supposed to be enjoying one half of it's just this intense space horror movie against the Borg, and you're just using the Borg as a foil for that. Something new to audiences. It was their hottest villain that they had come up with in the Next Generation that had generated the most buzz from the core audience. So it was a perfect villain to introduce to a larger audience and try to sell some Star Trek on. It's also a good chunk of why Voyager became such a Borg thing. Dually, both because a larger audience had been exposed to who the Borg were, and so might come watch Borg if they happen across a Voyager commercial that's got a bunch of Borg in it, and because they had all these leftover props, which is also part of the problem with modern Star Trek. All those old props are gone. Star Trek used to be a very cost-efficient endeavor. They had built up all of these sets over the course of a couple decades, and they would just repurpose them for the movies or the TV shows. I mean, the Next Generation set became Voyager's set, and the Next Generation set had been like the set of the Enterprise from like at least up through Star Trek V, and I think they redid something for Star Trek VI, if I recall. And then it was all torn down after Enterprise flubbed. I remember seeing a big long show on the History Channel where of them auctioning off like all the old Star Trek props. They're all gone. And all that stuff that used to Star Trek, as long as they could keep their budget under X, they know they have this amount of fans, and so they can always cut this amount of profit no matter what, as long as they can keep their budget down here. And part of how keeping their budget down here is they already have all this shit already built for the show. So they can make a movie out of it. They just need to basically rent better quality cameras and give their actors slightly better pay. It seemed like a win-win. And so, I mean, a good chunk of Star Trek's problem right now is that it's not cost-effective anymore because they've had to rebuild it from scratch under these brand new, intense CGI, high-quality, high-definition standards of modern times. Now, anyway, quit blaming the actors. It's an art form. And I think in this instance, it's safe to say that Idris Elba has earned this. Hell, there's been talk about this for years, years, since before. What was the last? Skyfall was the last one, wasn't it? Or no, Spectre. Yeah, since before Spectre came out, I've I've seen articles and people talking about Idris Elba. He's been the guy with the most buzz for a long time to get this role. So just fucking deal with it. Superior people aren't so fucking wincy about all this shit, I would say. Wouldn't you think?